And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven.
And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great and fiery red dragon, with 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns. Pretty scary, right? The dragon of Revelation. Well, what if I was to tell you that the dragon of Revelation is real? And it's something that each of us deals with every day. Would you believe me? Well, this great enemy of goodness, this evil hater of everything that is from the Lord, is not something that we can see with our physical eyes. But instead, it's a subtle influence that touches everybody in the world on a daily basis. Now, in the Bible, it describes this thing in such awesome and terrifying terms because it's trying to take something that's very subtle and bring it into the light, to make it easier to see and to show us how dangerous this influence really is. So today we're going to be taking a look in a deeper light at the dragon of Revelation. Now our reading for today is a description taken from Emanuel Swedenborg when he was allowed to experience this influence with his spiritual eyes open. At the present time, there is an utter darkness with the mass of peoples who call themselves Christians, claiming to be in the light of the gospel. This was made plain to me from the sphere of influence in the spiritual world, which flows and radiates from the Christians of the present day. Wherever it reaches, it sneaks into people's ideas. It is like a black cloud in winter, which brings on darkness, turns rain into snow, strips bare the trees, freezes the waters, and takes away all pasture from the sheep. This sphere insinuates a kind of lethargy respecting one God, regeneration, and the means of salvation. Like a plague, it infects anyone who catches breath of it. These spheres are like storm-driven atmospheres coming forth from the breathing holes of the dragon referred to in the book of Revelation, which, being spiritual, invades the mind and controls it. These spheres cannot be dissipated so long as the dragon is on the earth. So, have you ever had the experience where you were tempted to do something wrong and your mind just started to be flooded by all these excuses for why it was okay to do it? It was almost as if your mind had its own mind. It's amazing how good we can be at thinking of excuses for doing those evils that we want to do. And sometimes it can even feel like we can step back from our thoughts and say, where did that come from? That's not me. Well, the truth is that that is not you. It's actually from a spiritual influence that comes from within. A spiritual influence called the dragon of faith alone. Now, faith alone is a doctrine that says that a person doesn't need to live a good life to go to heaven. And this belief is something that shows up in many, many subtle ways in our lives. Have you ever had a moment where you're tempted to do something wrong and a voice came to you and said, oh, it's not a big deal? Or maybe, God forgives you already. It's not going to be a big deal if you do this. Or maybe a voice comes in and says, well, you can repent of this later. You got a long time to live. You can have fun a little bit in your early life. Now, all these voices might seem a little bit harmless, but if we saw what the Lord was really trying to tell us in these same moments, I think we'd see these voices in a clearer light. Oftentimes, the Lord is coming to us when we're tempted to do something wrong and saying, wake up. This thing, if you keep doing it, is going to spiritually kill you. And this might be the last chance you have to repent of this evil. When we see that the Lord is sometimes saying this to us, these voices that try to downplay the importance of living a spiritual life can be seen as they truly are, a great and fiery red dragon. Now, sometimes the voices get a little trickier because they start to use truth to get us off course. Have you ever heard this one? Well, God is love. And if God is love, then how would he want to take away something that I love? And I love to do this evil thing. Well, the truth is that God is love. But if we use that truth to do something evil, it's actually not doing us any good. God's love can't do us any good if we keep doing evil, because it can't come into us. We can't have his love because we've rejected it already. So, in this reading today, we read about this influence that Emanuel Swedenborg felt. He got to describe it when his spiritual eyes were open. And he said that this influence brought a lethargy, or what is the same as a boredom, around things of God, around things of spiritual regeneration or rebirth, and around people finding the means to get salvation. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you just felt kind of apathetic towards religion? This is the dragon, and what you need to know is that this voice is not you, that this influence of apathy is not you, and that you can turn to a different voice within yourself from the Lord that takes your spiritual life seriously. So, my task for you this week is to set aside a little bit of time to look within. Go find somewhere where you can stay quiet for a little bit and meditate, and ask the Lord to show you something in your life that you're not taking seriously, that you know deep down the Lord really wants you to change. Now, one that happens a lot in this world is voices from the world that tell us that lust is not a big deal. How many voices do we hear on television that say, oh, a little bit of lust here and there never hurt anybody? But we know from the Word that lust is something that can destroy our spiritual happiness, our true love. So maybe that's one. Or maybe you have another message that you tell yourself, making an excuse for why it's okay to do something that really you should be changing. Now, the second part of this task is I want you to think of somebody in your life that helps you to take your spiritual path seriously. There are so many people in this world that make it harder to live a spiritual life because they downplay the importance of life change. And there are relatively few that when you tell them about your struggle are really going to say, that is a big deal, and I want to help you with that. So I want you to think of a person in your life who can help you with this struggle. And also, if you can't find anybody, you can write to me on my YouTube page and I'll talk to you. If we can learn to take one thing and take it seriously in our life, one evil that we're going to repent of and take it seriously, if we can turn to others in our life who help us to take that path seriously and who give us wisdom on that path, then we're going to start to clean out that spiritual air, that dragon breath that affects the spiritual world, that influence from hell that doesn't want us to take a spiritual path seriously. And when we do this, we're going to start to become part of the Lord's army. That angel Michael who is fighting against the dragon. And that air in our life, that spiritual air, will start to breathe the air of heaven, meaning that we'll start to have thoughts that make it easier to be a spiritual person, that make it easier to take the spiritual path seriously. And war broke out in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but they did not prevail. And they were cast out of heaven, and there was no longer a place found for them in heaven.